Let's continue our discussion of the supply chain management aspect of market value creation, specifically focusing on marketing channels and marketing intermediaries. Let's first look at some common marketing channels. Probably the simplest marketing channel is when the producer sells directly to the consumer. While this is the simplest channel, it may not always be the most effective or efficient channel. For example, producers are experts at producing things. They like to manufacture a lot. And whenever the producer sells to the consumer, they have to actually facilitate that exchange that we talked about very early in this session of videos. So what the producer might want to do would be to involve someone in the middle, a marketing intermediary or middleman that could facilitate exchanges for them and allow the producer to focus on producing products or services. So commonly what will happen is the producer will sell products and services to a marketing intermediary or middleman called a retailer. By definition, this marketing intermediary is a retailer because they sell directly to the consumer. So now the producer can focus on producing products and services, sell those to a retailer who's a specialist in selling products to consumers. Sometimes, however, there might be so many retailers involved in selling your product or service that the producer doesn't even want to have to deal with that many retailers. So instead, they might add another intermediary between the producer and the retailer called a wholesaler or a distributor. In this case, we have two intermediaries, a wholesaler or a distributor, and a retailer. The retailer sells to the end consumer, and the wholesaler is the person or company, between the producer and the retailer. Again, sometimes there might be so many wholesalers or distributors, or a wholesaler or distributor might not want to interact with just one producer. So it might be more efficient or effective to add an agent or a broker who represents several producers to the wholesaler or distributor. So you can definitely see that while this producer to consumer, the direct channel, appears to be the simplest, and it is the simplest, it may be more efficient or effective for the producer and the consumer to add some marketing intermediaries. People often ask, though, doesn't adding these intermediaries increase cost to the consumer? Because each one of these intermediaries is wanting to make a profit for the services they provide. Let's discuss that a little bit more. What if there were no intermediaries? What if manufacturers had to deal directly with all consumers? Remember, manufacturers like producing things in huge quantities, and consumers typically only buy in limited quantities for their own personal use and consumption. Keep in mind, consumers oftentimes like to be able to compare products and services from various manufacturers when they buy. So consumers would have to contact multiple manufacturers to be able to look at competing brands when they buy. So oftentimes it makes sense to actually add an intermediary between the manufacturers and the consumers. Here, manufacturers only have to deal with a limited number of intermediaries, so they can focus on doing what they do best, producing volumes of their product or service, and consumers can go to one intermediary and see competing products or brands from multiple manufacturers. Keep in mind also that when intermediaries buy from a manufacturer, they buy from many consumers, so they would buy in many more quantities, much huger amounts of quantities than any one consumer would buy. Therefore, they can buy at a discounted price. So if TJ Maxx, for example, wanted to buy jeans from Levi's, they might buy 100,000 pairs of Levi jeans, whereas you, any one consumer, might only buy one or two. So you can see why TJ Maxx would sell to an why Levi would sell to an intermediary like TJ Maxx at a much reduced cost than they would sell to you. Oftentimes, intermediaries are really good at performing certain functions, like adding tags or putting things on hangers or that sort of thing. So manufacturers might sell at a reduced cost to them for providing some sort of functions. Intermediaries perform some basic functions that manufacturers typically aren't experts in. For one thing, they would buy in huge quantities, 100,000 pairs of jeans, for example. And when they bought those 100,000 pairs, they would sort them out by sizes or colors so that they could then provide an assortment to their various stores. What they might do is send several of each size and several of each color to a particular store, so the consumer would have an assortment when they came to visit. And then they would transport those to those stores. Sometimes they even buy off season, so the manufacturer can actually sell winter coats in March, and an intermediary might store those then until the next September or October, when they would then assort them and transport them to the retail outlet. When the intermediary buys the products or services from the manufacturer, they are facilitating those transactions. They buy those huge quantities and take the risk from the manufacturer of selling that product later to consumers. And they facilitate those sales to consumers by perhaps providing credit to consumers, having information about consumers and what types of styles they want, and even in offering special promotions and displays in their stores so that consumers will be more interested in buying those products or services. So the bottom line is that while a direct channel is the simplest, it's not always the most efficient or effective, because sometimes adding a marketing intermediary like a wholesaler or a retailer who is a specialist in logistical transaction and facilitating functions can actually reduce costs to consumers because they add efficiency to the marketing channel. One of the things to keep in mind is sometimes within this marketing channel, there might be channel conflict that develops. Obviously, it benefits the consumers if the producers, the wholesalers, the retailers have cooperation, because when they're cooperating, they're working more efficiently, and effectively, which means they reduce costs. Sometimes these producers, wholesalers, or retailers might have competing interests. Each one has a particular goal or objective they're trying to achieve for their business. So when they have competing interests, they might do something like try to eliminate an intermediary. That's called disintermediation. or they might fight over which price they're buying it at. Let's look at an example of that. Here is a sign that was posted at one time in Costco stores. It says, due to our inability to be competitive, they're not going to be carrying Coca-Cola products anymore. Basically, the two, Coca-Cola, the producer, and Costco, the retailer, had been negotiating a price at which the retailer would buy the product from the producer, and they couldn't agree on that price. The retailer wanted to buy it at a low enough price that they could sell it to the consumer and be competitive with other retailers like Sam's Club or Trader Joe's. The producer wanted to sell it at a particular price to Costco that would allow them to make a significant amount of profit that they wanted. So they couldn't agree on price. They probably were trying to figure out which of the people in this marketing channel had what's called channel leadership or power. Producers, Coca-Cola, thought that Coca-Cola had the channel leadership or power. They thought if people went to the retailer, Costco, and they didn't have Coca-Cola products, that guess what? They would go to another retailer to be able to get their Coca-Cola as well as other products and services that they might buy at Costco. Costco thought, you know what? We think we have channel power. We think we have loyal Costco customers that come to us, and guess what? If we don't have Coca-Cola, they're going to buy another brand of soft drink. In actuality, probably there were some customers who would still go to Costco, and there probably were some customers that would switch their retailer to get their Costco products. But I think you can see how this illustrates channel conflict and who has channel power within a particular marketing channel, and helps you to see how channel cooperation can actually benefit the consumer when the marketing channel works smoothly together.